Welcome back to a Valentine special of Candid with Kannyn. In this episode, we feature Colby, Kannyn's husband, as they share how they've managed and grown the business throughout the years.
Welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself, honey?
I am Colby Corder, husband of Kannyn January.
It's very official. We are so grateful that you would do this. I know this isn't your cup of tea.
I didn't have a choice.
Yes, you did. So I wanted to share with our audience some of the challenges and some of the joys of being able to work together. I think, we know several couples who work together in some capacity, but how long have we been together, babe?
As a couple for 16 years.
And how long have we been married?
13, coming up on 13.
You mean 13 joyful years?
13 plus. Yeah.
The best years of your life.
Yeah, of course. Those are nuts.
And we have 2 kids. How old are boys?
Hayden is 13 and Asher is 9.
And we have a dog and 2 cats now and a lizard. Yeah. So we have a full plate.
Yeah.
Who takes care of the animals?
I do, pretty much exclusively.
So how long have you and I been running the stores together?
I left my job working in the tech industry about 5 or 6 years ago now. And I guess I would help occasionally here and there when you needed new stereo system installed in one of the stores prior to that, but exclusively
lots of advice, lots of free advice at night.
But yeah, exclusively working together with me not having another job or career about 5 or 6 years ago. And
what prompted you to want to do that? Because it was your decision, which was awesome.
Yeah, I think, you were such a great entrepreneur that you kept building the business and making it bigger and bigger as I was kind of focusing on my career. And I was noticing as we were growing that we had less and less time together. I think I got to the point where I realized that if we put our heads together and focused on more of a family business thing, then we could spend more time together as a family and we wouldn't need a nanny and be away from each other as much. So I think it started making
we both traveled too for work
a lot.
So that was complicated at times.
We were working long hours and so I wouldn't even see you guys in the morning because I would leave for work before you guys even woke up. And then I would get home in the evenings and see you for, a couple hours. And that was kind of...
Well, sometimes you would see the boys because they had a pretty strict 7:30 bedtime.
Yeah.
Like you'd see them for like an hour and a half.
Right. So That was a big part of what I thought the direction I wanted my life to go and our lives to go as a family that was missing. So it seemed to me with your brilliant leadership that we could achieve more of a family unit.
How was that transition for you? Having your own career probably feels very different than working together in a business. So how was that transition?
It was, I think it's still a transition. It's, it's something that you're constantly learning how to manage. And, there's, I think it's been tricky, like the overlap of work and personal family life stuff has been interesting to sort of navigate.
You mean you get sick of me?
No, it's more like prior to me coming on and helping at Ambiance, if something happened at work, that was at work. It stayed at work, and I could work it out the next day at work or something. Something happens at work at Ambiance, then that comes home with me because I'm with you like a lot. So, and vice versa, like something happens at home, then that goes into work together and we have to work it out. We don't have like that separate sort of way to work things out. It's like, it's all integrated into our lives.
So if you had to give advice to a couple who was maybe about to embark on this journey, what would you say?
I'd say be patient and understanding and mindful of how you may come across in the things that you're saying. And, these are just things I would say to anybody about life in general. But I think, especially when you're working with a partner, you're going to not necessarily see eye to eye on everything, and that's fine. But the way you communicate your disagreement is really, really important.
Amen. I told him I was going to ask him some uncomfortable questions. So. How'd you know I was the one?
Oh, what a segue.
We'll get back to that other stuff and break it up.
I think I probably knew before you did, if I had to guess, which makes complete sense because when we met, I was going to Cuesta and working at a record store. So my life prospects did not seem super encouraging. And you had like graduated from Cal Poly, you owned a business, and lady about town. So I felt like I just like won the lottery. And so I was really surprised that you were interested in me. I think this story. I've told this before, but I remember when we first started hanging out, I had this friend who I was talking to about you, and I always felt like you were too good for me, And so I was like talking to my buddy and said, "Well, how do you get a girl that's too good for you?" And he said, "Don't think she's too good for you." That like really rang true to me. I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do this." And I guess the rest is history. Somehow I convinced you that you should be with me, and it worked.
Some people probably know these stories, but I'll share it with our audience that he used to walk me to work almost every day when we were dating, barefoot, mind you. And he'd bring me lunch, and he would just come by and visit, and it was so sweet and so romantic. And I, in spite of his prospects, I fell in love with who he was as a person, and he was brilliant. He just took a different detour after high school. Tell people what you did after high school.
Yeah, so I grew up here in St. Louis, so I think I had this feeling that a lot of people living in small towns have, where
everybody I know that grew up in St. Louis, I feel feels this way.
It's like a small town cabin fever or something. I just felt like I needed to get out and see the world. Initially, I traveled around Europe for a while, and that was really fun. I had some crazy experiences. I got robbed at one point while I was traveling. I had to sleep on the streets a couple nights. Like it was a wild ride. And came back and decided I wanted to move to New York. So I saved up some money for about a year and then moved out to New York City, lived there and for about a year and a half or so. And I managed a restaurant in the city and hung out, did a lot of growing up while I was out there. I didn't
slept on a few couches.
Slept on some couches, yeah. In the
beginning. It wasn't who's the famous person the designer that you? Zaldi.
Yeah, I made friends with
for people who don't know that, he did Gwen Stefani's. Yeah. He was the designer for Gwen Stefani's line.
Zaldi's a great guy, really nice person. Anyway, so I think I was there until I was about 21, maybe 22, and just realized kind of what I was missing here, and decided to come back. And
for those of us who didn't grow up in San Luis Obispo, I think that any of us who come here realize how special it is.
Well,
instantly.
I haven't left since. So
yes.
It's a special place, So I came back and started going to Cuesta and got into Cal Poly, met you, and
not in that order. You met me. You were 22 when we met.
Yeah,
we're getting old.
We won't say who's older.
I'm older. He likes to remind me. Back to the business. What do you think that you've seen that we've done over the years that has helped us get to where we are now?
The big thing about being a business owner, as far as I can surmise based on my experience, is you have to be a really good problem solver and you have to wear a lot of hats. So it's not just problem solving one thing. Like if I'm a computer programmer, I'm problem solving how to do some coding stuff, right? But if you're a business owner, there's a million different things you have to know about. And hiring good people has helped to help us kind of learn and figure out what we don't know.
Hiring people, not being afraid to hire people that are more qualified than you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And then learning from them and, helping them grow in other ways. And so, yeah, I think not being afraid to dive in and really be an open book and learn and
make mistakes.
Make mistakes along the way.
I would say that we've made a lot of mistakes.
A ton of mistakes.
Yeah.
So.
And then moving forward, you have a good friend and he works with companies like Fortune 500 companies all over the world and works with CEOs. And he's talked to us about how like basically your grit quotient, how the cats are really adversity quotient. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's developed a system for essentially, it's like IQ, but instead of intelligence, it's your grit, like how resilient you are.
But your resilience, how resilient you can be, basically determines your level of success. And I would say that that's been really true for us because there's been many moments. Our cat really agrees with this right now. That had we given up or quit trying in one arena of our business, then we wouldn't be where we are today.
Sure. And I think I mean, this is maybe kind of cliche to say now, but you do really learn the most from failing. If you constantly have success, then I feel like you're missing a big part of what it means to build something. You know,
I think about that a lot in terms of our kids, and even this last year, because it's been one of the hardest years that I've been through in my lifetime. And not because of any one thing, but it's because of everything, between us having to shut down and having to deal with having to like navigate our vendors and our, support our employees and stay positive and stay motivated. And then we shifted online so fast. That's probably something we didn't do well. We should have been working on.
We should have been
more.
working on that a long time ago.
I mean, we were, but not in the right way.
Not the way we are now. But,
yeah. And then just with our kids and having to homeschool, and then having, family members with health issues, and it's been a lot.
It's been a lot for everyone. We're not alone. I feel fortunate.
Yeah, but
in some ways.
But I think about that for our kids. I actually lost my train of thought, because I do think that adversity is really good. Like, I'm worried about, the state of our world and our community, but I also feel like challenging times really leads to building that adversity quotient. So I do think that one of the things we can say about our kids and everybody's kids is that this is going to force them to grow.
Sure. I think challenging times also have this cool way of like revealing opportunities that you didn't see before. If you're in this mode of sort of just going through the motions and keeping things going, I feel like you're not as aware of kind of what's going on around you. And when you really have to think about, well, maybe this isn't going to work, I'm going to have to figure some stuff out, you start realizing that there are other things out there that you can tap into to
it forces innovation, right? Yeah. What do you think some of the silver linings have been for you over this last year?
There's a few. I think one, I as challenging as it is in some ways that we're locked down, I've really enjoyed the closeness that I've had with my family. I mean, we're dropping the kids off in the morning and we don't see them, for most of the day. So
and then there's sports,
right? So we're, you get into this routine of just sort of shuttling children around. So it's been nice to actually be around them and spend quality time with them, shoot the basketball around,
board games,
yeah, movie nights. Like, I don't know, you can't do anything else, right? So we're
hanging
as a family. This is
yeah. What do you think the hardest part of this last year has been for you?
There's a lot of things. One, I guess the thing that came to mind first was friendships. I feel like some friendships have grown a lot closer, and others have become really challenging to sort of navigate. And granted, I wouldn't say I'm a bad friend, but I definitely
You're a dude.
Struggle with
You're such a dude. I have to be like, hey babe, have you talked to so-and-so in a while? No. It's like, maybe you should reach out.
I'm not the best at reaching out, probably. So I'm not blaming anyone but myself in some ways, but we've become.
Oh my gosh, that cat is so funny. Want to lock it up. What do you think that we did over this last year that has enabled us to? This was obviously a tough year for the business, but I think all things considered, we have done very well. So what do you think?
How did we weather the storm?
Yes. The rocks in my head fill the holes in his.
I think it was a lot of different things. I mean, I think not delaying. I think you can get in trouble when you're not on top of things. So I think seeing ahead and trying to plan for the next few months and not just waiting to see how it works out. I think having that foresight of like, well, we don't know how this is going to go. So let's make sure that we have all our ducks in a row,
Yeah.
So
We put all our orders on hold
right.
the minute the lockdown happened, which is huge. I mean, in a retail store, retail environment, there's only a certain number of costs that you have control over.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are fixed, like insurance and rent and utilities and payroll to some degree, depending on how many staff members you have. But obviously, inventory is a huge expense, and it's really determined on how much you order. So,
sure. I also think, and we were doing this prior to the pandemic, the philosophy that you have on customer service and creating relationships, I think has really helped. I think we had enough people who love Ambiance and love Kelsey and all the girls at the stores.
we're really, really blessed in that way.
Very fortunate that we have people who care about us and wanted us to make it through this.
Yeah. I mean, I tell my staff this, that people don't really ever buy stuff from a retail business, especially now with how easy it is to find things through our phones or our computers. They really buy the relationships and the experience and the connection. So although the merchandise we curate, it's important that it's what the customer is looking for and wants. We have a really great staff right now who they're good people. And I want people to feel good in the store, whether they are a great customer or they don't ever shop, but they just like to come look.
Yeah.
What do you see for our future?
You specifically, what do you mean? Like
for our business, for our business?
For business?
Yeah.
I think we've tried a couple different growth scenarios that didn't work out.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them about that, babe?
Just having businesses out of the area. I think where we're at right now is
sometimes
working well.
Less is more.
Sometimes less is more.
Yeah. We had 2 other stores. We had a store in Mill Valley for 5 years and a store in Montecito for
that was only a couple of years,
2.
Right?
Yeah. And we closed the Montecito location during the shutdown.
Yeah.
But the Mill Valley store we had closed before that. Managing a business that is outside of where you live is very hard. I mean, Paso is 30 minutes away, but you can travel there every day, multiple times a day if you need to. But Mill Valley is kind of another story.
Yeah. Even Montecito, which is, an hour and a half away. It's not terrible, but it's still a 3-hour commute, so.
Yeah. It was more like 2 hours, I think, with traffic. So it was
if there's traffic,
4 hours.
Yeah, you're in for a longer ride for sure.
Beautiful communities, both of them. Yeah. I loved very much.
I loved, and the experience of doing that in some ways was enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. We got to spend a lot of time in San Francisco.
Yeah. And like you said, Marin County in general is just a gorgeous place.
Yeah. Hiring there was
staffing
not my favorite. That
alone was, yeah.
If what would be our biggest challenge in any business, would you say?
Our biggest challenge in any business? Staffing.
It's managing employees. I think that is
for sure
the hardest
especially
part.
When you're not able to be there.
Yeah. Even here, I think it's hard managing personalities and oversee. The bigger you get, the harder it is to oversee and like creating expectations and also encouraging your employees. And, there's a lot that goes into making sure people are happy and people are getting along and
it's not fair.
Is getting done.
It's not fair to them either. If we're not able to be there and we're not able to be the best, leaders that they deserve.
So back to the question, where do you see our business going in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years? Geez, I think probably more online. We'll be doing more of that, but I think we'll have to wait and kind of see what's going on downtown. A lot of businesses are closing right now. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I don't foresee that changing. Yeah. It's probably going to continue to happen. I did hear some encouraging news about how much people are saving during this time, which, made me feel good because, I know this isn't true for everybody, but we have the highest savings rate that I think we've ever had. It's over 15%, and it ends up being trillions of dollars, which just means that there are a lot of people in a very good position, so that when things are able to open up safely, that I do think our economy will start moving in a healthy direction. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers that this year is the year that things start turning around, and it seems promising. I know the beginning of the year obviously has been very challenging, but I don't know. I'm optimistic.
I like that. What is the hardest part about working with your wife? I think this isn't a loaded question.
No, I mean, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but the overlap of everything, like there's nothing is separate anymore. It's not like, well, Colby's got his job that he goes to and does that independently of me. It's all one thing, and navigating all of the day-to-day things mixed in with work things and, kid things, animal things, like it's all that sometimes can be challenging because, like maybe I'm irritated about something that happened with the kids, and then I bring that into work, and I don't know, stuff like that.
What do you like most about being self-employed?
I like the freedoms in some ways, and other ways, like, in other ways it's more difficult, and I'm maybe less freeing, because you get a phone call in the middle of the night that, Sentinel Security is, has an alarm that's going off or whatever.
Or on a Saturday afternoon.
But, right. Yeah. So there are limitations there, but I also like the idea of being self-made in a way, like building something of your own, like you have ownership of that, it's your thing.
Yeah. I would say for me, it would be being able to travel together, because that was like the first few years of Asher's life and like half of Hayden's life, just because you were going to school and working nights when we had Hayden, and we didn't really see each other. We were like passing ships in the night. Like you'd drop Hayden off with me at work, and you'd go to work, and then I'd be with Hayden a couple hours, and then we'd go home, and we'd be asleep by the time you got home, and then we'd do it all over the next day. So since you decided to come help run the stores and be partners, then I feel like, if we want to take a trip, we can just say, well, we're going to just schedule this time off together. Yeah. You don't have to get it approved by a boss or like work it around.
I can't do it this time because I have this thing going on.
Yeah. You should tell people a little bit about how we started, because I think, obviously we've come a long way, but I mean, when I first bought Ambiance, I took out that SBA loan, and I think my dad was still helping me out every month. And we lived in a studio. Was it a studio? It was.
Yeah, it was a house that had Victorian that had been broken up into
several apartments, but it was probably 400 square feet, 300 square feet. It was tiny. It wasn't even, and there were very few places where you could stand all the way up.
Yeah.
And it was $700 a month. Hayden came along, and so we moved into a bigger 2-bedroom, but it was
we should maybe clarify, like when Kannyn got pregnant with Hayden, I was still in college, and we were living together, and we had Hayden at the children's center at Cal Poly, and I was waiting tables at night. And Kannyn was running the store. So I would wake up in the morning, get Hayden ready, and take him to school with me to Cal Poly, and drop him off at Cal Poly. And then I'd go to class all day, and Kannyn would be working. And then I would pick Hayden up, bring him into Ambiance, where Kannyn would continue to work with Hayden as a baby. And I would go to work at Big Sky Cafe all night, and then come home and do homework, and then rinse and repeat. Those were long days.
Yeah, but it was also when we had Hayden, like the first few months of having him, you and I talk about this, it was some of the most magical time.
Oh, for sure.
Together.
Yeah. I mean, we had nothing, and those are some of the happiest memories I have of my entire life.
Yeah, we lived in a dump. There was mold growing in all the closets and all of the kitchen cabinets. And so one of our friends, because I was pregnant, went and painted everything before we moved in. It was growing like through the wall.
It was pretty bad. And we had termites so bad in the house that I remember in the laundry room, like I actually stepped through the floor once.
Yeah, it happened in the bathroom too.
Yeah.
And then I had to like freak out on them for them to fix it. And then we had fleas.
Oh man. Well, that was our own fault though.
Well, was it? Because our cat was an outside cat. We had fleas in the house and we had hardwood floors. I remember calling the exterminator and he's like, yeah, I'll come out to spray or whatever. And he's like, you have hardwood floors.
How's that even possible?
How do you have fleas? We're like, we don't know. we had to bomb the house. I remember I would wake up. I would wake up and like run across the
run across
the house.
Lift your legs up and make sure you didn't have.
You could wear like any pants because you have to check. It was so gnarly. And then I remember there was one in Hayden's hair, and I like had a full meltdown. He's a baby. And then so finally we I think we rented a hotel and bombed it at like 3 times.
Oh man.
It was like, I didn't realize this, but they're like dirt fleas. Mm-hmm. And they were coming from underneath the house. I mean, that house should be condemned. That house should be torn down and rebuilt.
Yeah.
And then we moved across the street and it was a similar house, like a little 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And it was so cute though.
It was nice.
It was a really nice house.
And the owner
was super funky. He lived behind us. Brian. He was so nice. Yeah. He loved Hayden. And then we had Ash, and we had 1 bathroom, and there were 4 of us living in the house. And we decided that we should probably find something bigger.
Yeah. And we put everything we had into buying our first house.
We bought our first house, 3% down, literally every single penny. I remember thinking, what if I lose this check as I'm going to the I think of title office with like this cashier's check? I was like, oh my God, this is everything I have. Yeah. And and wondering like, how are we going to do this? Because it was double what we were paying in rent before. And it's
figured it out.
Yeah. Well, I just, I'm a big believer in The Secret. I'm like, what you think about you bring about that everyone makes fun of me for right now. But, I think every time we've taken a risk, even if it didn't work out, we learned so much in that. And most of the time it did, like when we bought that house, you and I were both really nervous, and we there was never a single day that I was worried about making our payment, or, it was empty for a long time because we couldn't afford furniture. But yeah, it's been an amazing journey. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to a young couple about to have their first kid?
I was really nervous about being a dad. Probably more than most. I don't know how nervous. I mean, my friends were nervous, when they were about to be dads. But someone said to me once. So I asked a lot of people, like who were parents, fathers in particular, tell me about this dad thing. How does it work? Like, what do you do? And I think the best advice I got was probably the simplest, and it wasn't even really advice. It just calmed me. And he said, well, I don't know, but it'll be the best thing you ever do. And he was right. And I think when I thought about it that way, I was less focused on worrying about making mistakes as a parent, and more focused on like, okay, I can do this. This is, it's probably going to be great, and it is. It's great.
It's the hardest thing and the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the hardest because raising another human being to be a good human being is a lot of responsibility.
It is a lot of responsibility.
I kept thinking, when they're babies, they're so easy. I love babies. And then when they become toddlers, they're so busy. And so it's exhausting. And then I was like, oh, it's going to get easier as they become a teenager. No. I
think, it gets, well, it's like you said, it just changes.
It's way more complicated.
Yeah. So when you have a baby or a toddler, even for a lot of reasons, you're basically just, you're taking care of basic needs, like they need to be fed, they have to change the diaper, you got to make sure they're not crying, nap time, stuff like that. But as they get older, you're teaching them life lessons. Sometimes those things get pretty heavy, and like I don't want to make mistakes when it comes to that kind of thing. I want my kids to
be good people.
Yeah.
You want them to be successful, but more than anything, I want them to be good. I want them to be happy.
Right.
What's one of your best memories with the boys?
Together or
independent, whatever. Yeah.
Some of my best memories with Hayden were those first months at that house that was falling over. We had this
with us in it.
We had a front yard. I mean, the words front yard are sort of a stretch, because it was basically a patch of weeds and,
so true.
and some rocks.
It was
and
magical,
dirt.
though.
But I remember just sitting with him as baby
on a blanket
out there, and just hanging out with him, and just thinking how wonderful it was to be to have this little guy with me. And
he was so happy.
Yeah. Asher, I'm trying to think of favorite Asher experience. There's so many. He's like the funny kid, he's really he's a riot. I remember one time Hayden had to all the bathroom, we had limited bathrooms always until we bought our first house. But I remember one time Ash, the bathrooms were taken. I think you were using a bathroom, and I think we only had one bathroom, so that was it. And Hayden had to go to the bathroom really bad, and so I was like, okay, well, you can go outside. So I opened the door, and we had this little patio deck area, and I thought he was just going to go pee in the bushes, and he just started peeing right on the deck. And I was like, oh, Hayden, no. And as I'm saying this, our toddler, Asher, who was probably 1.5, maybe 2 at the time, ran out and saw Hayden peeing and decided he was going to go play in the pee. So he started doing a dance in the pee as Hayden was like, oh.
Oh, but it's a good memory.
It's
stressful.
It was one of those hilarious dad memory.
Yeah.
Well,
how do you think we got to this point? Because we were really young, obviously, when we met and had a kid and got married, and I had already bought the store from the previous owner. How do you think we were able to stay the path?
Giving up would have been really easy to do at any point.
Many times.
Many times I
thought about it.
And
I'm pretty sure I
debated it. And
I'm pretty sure I asked my dad a couple of times.
So there was lots of times where, but I think, for us, just having to go back to the grit thing, just saying, this is really hard, but it's not always going to be hard, and we can figure it out. So having the confidence to know that sometimes you just have to get through it. And on the other end, once you've gotten through all the difficult stuff, you're often in a better place than you would have been had you quit.
Right. I think, I think we took it, I think taking it a day at a time, I think we as humans try to look at long-term, if we're in a bad place with our business or with our job or even with our marriage, I think that we tend to imagine that that's how it's always going to be. Mm-hmm. But I think if you take it a day at a time, things do change. We've gone through definitely lots of ups and downs. I forgot about, we opened that vintage store together. In retrospect, we shouldn't have opened up retrospect. That was probably one of the hardest.
That was that was
hardest times.
Failed experiment that really,
but we tried to work together then, and we weren't as successful. It was very hard for us.
We had a lot of other things going on. I was still at Cal Poly at that time.
And Working Nights at Big
Sky. And so it was.
And we had a 2-year-old.
Yeah, it was not the same scenario. yeah, I mean, I remember after we closed that, you couldn't even take a paycheck home.
No, I let go it was when the recession
Right at the
hit.
beginning, like 2009, maybe?
No, it was more like 2007,
No, because Hayden was
2008.
born in 2007. So he was like
It must be
2.
2008. Well, but we had opened up Retrospect, I think, the beginning,
Yeah.
right as the recession was coming. And we had it open for about 2 years. And then we moved the store across the street.
Yeah.
Remember, we tried to
Which was a great thing, honestly.
Yeah. We tried to redo those floors by ourselves. Do you remember that? And we
it
hired that
was
guy
a disaster.
that we found at Home Depot to help us. And he asked for cash every day when he was done. He showed up the next day drunk.
Yeah, it was. Oh man,
that was quite an adventure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes the worst ideas end up being the best ideas, and sometimes the worst ideas are just a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely, like you said, an entrepreneur watching my parents be self-employed. I have a high tolerance for risk, and I think that you're a lot more level-headed when it comes to that stuff. So we do tend to balance each other out. I think that you have pulled me from walking off the cliff multiple times. But yeah, I think life, there's a guy I like to listen to, and he says, like there's a lot of suffering in life, but how you respond to that suffering really defines how you live your life. And I think finding a way to reframe it so that it's not, the difficulties and the struggles aren't ruining your day to day. They're just a problem to be solved, or an obstacle to overcome, or something to try to process.
Like Sisyphus pushing that rock up the hill.
Yes.
So you take ownership of it.
Yes. I wouldn't change it. I'm a very spiritual person, and I thank God every day that we are able to live the life that we live now. And I think about all the time how, had I given up along the way at any moment, I wouldn't be where I am. And I think I had to get through, and we had to get through every single one of those challenges to get here.
Yeah, I'm grateful for them in a lot of ways. I think they've made me who I am and made you who you are. And I like both of us. So I think we're doing something right.
You're stuck with me. What do you think makes a strong marriage?
Well, there's a lot of things. Obviously, love, being able to communicate with each other in an honest way, challenging each other, I think I'm a better person being with you than I would be on my own.
I like to remind you of that.
So you remind me of that often. I think, if you're flying solo, your ideas, which sometimes your ideas, and by your, I mean everybody's, mine included, sometimes you have some crazy thoughts, right? And having someone there to say, that is insane, is a good thing. As difficult as it is to hear sometimes, but sometimes that's what you need to hear, and it allows you to compromise and think about the world in a different way.
How do you balance your own personal needs or desires with like having a family and running a business?
I think that's a really tricky balance. And I think in some ways, sometimes we get stuck in these positions where something is going to be suffering, there are times in life when we need to focus more on the business, and then our family life suffers a little bit. And so there's always a little bit of a trade-off. It's kind of it feels like it's impossible in some ways to balance everything perfectly all the time. So I think being aware when one thing is suffering, and then dialing back something else to help sort of focus on the thing that needs a little more help, which is a really difficult thing to do. I want you to be able to do things, like I want you to be able to go to dinner with your girlfriends and, do other,
when that's allowed.
When you're allowed to do that.
When
right.
That's allowed.
That's a little easier now because there's really not a lot of options. Yeah. I think just constantly being aware of and trying to keep the scales as level as possible.
And I think time management, I think that's something you're really good with. I mean, when you were in your professional career, you were like a project manager for a big
project manager
tech firm, and you worked right underneath the owner. So you kind of manage a lot of departments. And I think that you use a lot of those same skills in your everyday life in terms of managing your time and what needs to get done and what's a priority and what's not a priority. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I love you.
Love you too.
I love you more. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.